Alright, I thought I'd do a quick video with just some tips about replacing an upper control arm on, this is an '03 Silverado, but I think it's the same from 2000 up to like '07 or so. Same setup, and I've already got it halfway apart, but uh, I learned through some tribulations, and I've done a few of these before on other vehicles, never on this truck, but should have known better than to bother with it myself, because General Motors makes these things out of the worst pig iron they can find, and they just rust and fall apart no matter what you do. You can see in here, I mean, this thing, I spray it with, used a few different things over the years, but this thing gets pretty regular anti-rust treatments, but then you run into problems like this thing here that's just, I mean, there's a drain hole in there, but that's not going to work. That just captures all kinds of rust, and this is the bracket for the control arm and to the front of the truck, and you can see the stupid things welded to the frame. Speaking of the bracket, be careful when you're hammering the control arm bolts out that are going to be all kinds of friggin' stuck in there, because GM can't be bothered to put a little bit of grease on the thing so that they don't get stuck in there, or make it a greasable bolt or something like that for another 32 cents each, or put a Zerk fitting on the the bushing for the control arm, or a million other different ways they could make this a little bit better. They're going to be really stuck in there, and you got these little guys right here that your adjuster's right on. I don't know what the heck you do if one of those things falls off in the middle of this process. You'd have to, I don't know, maybe somebody makes a replacement bracket. You could saw the old one off and weld a new one onto your rusty ass frame that is not really going to take too kindly to welding on. But I digress. So, anyway, lesson learned number one: don't assume you're just going to pop the old control arm off and bolt the new one on using your old hardware like you would on any other car, because your old hardware is going to come out looking chowdered as shit like this, and it's going to be a mess. You're not going to want to reuse it even if you can, and didn't bugger up the end of the bolt beating it out of there with one of the tools that you shouldn't need for this job but probably will, which is an air hammer. What I ended up having to do was take one of my chisels, and you can probably buy something similar to this, but I cut the end off and put a little bit of a groove in there to help center it on the bolt. But you need something short so that you can fit up in here when you do it. I had this illusion that I was going to be able to save these adjusters, so I goofed around and pulled them out as is. If I was smart, what I would have done is back the nut off and just cut them off flush with a bracket with an angle grinder. It would have made it a lot easier. So what you should do is just go buy another set of adjusters. I got these things. This is from Specialty Products Company. Summit Racing sells them. There's probably other places that do too. And there's a number 86375. I assume that's a part number. There's nothing else on there. But you're going to need new adjusters. Let's see, what else are you going to need? Some good grease to put on the adjusters, something to clean out these things, which everybody ought to have anyway. We didn't get to that yet. Usually what you can do to get the ball joint, that's this thing right here to come out of the steering knuckle, that's this thing right here, it goes down in that hole right there, is just sort of whack your steering knuckle and kind of tap around the control arm a little bit with a hammer. And I wailed on that thing with that, which is not a small hammer. That's like a 4-pounder. That's as big as you're going to get inside the wheel well here. I wailed on that puppy for a solid 20 minutes and had no luck, so we had to get out the old pickle fork. That's what this is, to pop the ball joint out. So if you're going to start this thinking that you're going to be able to work on it like any other car, just keep in mind that on top of buying your new upper control arm, you probably ought to get a new brake line, because yours is going to look like this. So I went ahead and did that. probably ought to replace your caliper while you're in here and got everything apart, because it looks like this. You're gonna more than likely need an air chisel and something stubby on the end. You're gonna need an angle grinder to cut off the bolts, and maybe make yourself a special tool for the end of your air hammer. Did I miss anything? Oh yeah, and you're gonna need new cam bolts and adjusters. If I was smart about this, after looking around this thing, instead of just buying this upper control arm, I found out after the fact, it happened to just pop up in an ad in my web browser looking for other stuff. There's a few companies that sell what they call a front end kit for these trucks, and it's just sort of got all the suspension parts that are going to go bad on these things because they're a piece of garbage. So, yeah, you're gonna do this one on your own, good friggin' luck.